morning, everyone, or afternoon if you're on the East Coast. Thank you for joining us this morning, Yvonne and myself. We are excited that we are able to do this and we're able to come together to do a question and answers on the nomination process for the Comp Laude Awards and Gala. Most of you should know me, but just in case, my name is Kristen Chavez, and I'm the President and CEO of Work Comp Central. One thing to note, I do hope that you all are staying safe and well during this unprecedented time. The Comp Laude Awards and Gala is something that has been going on. We're hitting our 7th annual Comp Laude Awards and Gala. And many times Yvonne and I are asked questions throughout the year, as well as the Work Comp Central staff, on the process and how a nomination becomes the award winner at the end. And so we thought we'd put this together and share with you all how it goes. This is a question and answer session, so if you do have questions, direct them in the chat feature to the Work Comp Central education profile, and we will do the best to get them answered. There is also an infographic that we have that we will be discussing during this presentation. It is located under handouts, and you are more than welcome to keep it, share it, and use for future. And at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Yvonne.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Most of you, as Kristen said, know me, but I will do a quick little intro. I am a marketing consultant in the workers' compensation industry. I have been in the industry for quite a few years. I won't name the number, but I've been working with Kristen and Work Comp Central on the Comp Laude Awards and Gala event since its inception in the form that it's in right now. So we are super excited to continue to see nominations coming in, even though we're dealing with this unprecedented situation, like Kristen said. So with that, I think we'll get started, and I'm looking forward to the questions that you guys might have. So think about questions that you might get as well in your discussions about Comp Laude. And I know there's still some uncertainty about the categories and just other little nuances. So anything that you can think of that you've heard along the way, please submit the questions and we'll do our best to answer them. So the current status of nominations right now, we have extended the deadline to April 17th. Normally we end the nominations around the beginning of April, just so that we have enough time to process all the nominations, and we'll go into the processes in a little bit here. But Kristen did extend the deadline to the 17th. So we have a few more days to get more nominations in, and we're looking forward to that. About an hour ago, we had 159 nominations. I've seen a couple come in since then. So looking forward to that. And I believe we did slightly over 200 last year, maybe around 220, but we're looking forward to getting at least that many, possibly more, to make the process interesting. Currently, we're looking for more nominations in the doctor, physician category, as well as the service provider and vendor category. And we'll go into the categories in a little bit and talk about the differences and maybe some tips on how you might nominate somebody or suggest that somebody else nominate a person or a company. So please help spread the word. If you know of a colleague or some colleagues that you can encourage to make a nomination, this is the time to do it. We've got just a few more days to get those nominations in. And the first process is super easy. It only takes about 5 minutes to make that first nomination. And you know, if they pass the first phase, then it gets a little bit more time consuming, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the first phase is super easy. It takes about 5 minutes. So think about, who do you know personally in the industry that hasn't been recognized yet with the Comp Laude Award? I know I was surprised to learn of a couple of people. I was talking to some folks last year, and I actually had an argument with a certain someone who I thought for sure had been nominated and had won an award, but he assured me that that had not been the case. So that's going to be my nomination this year. So here is what the nomination form looks like. Just FYI, the reason MTI America's logo is on there is because they are the current sponsor of the nomination station. So that's debuted at the event. So this past year at our event in Huntington Beach, MTI America had a station with a nice backdrop, and we were taking nominations at the event. So we'll be doing that again this year. But whoever sponsors the nomination station, their logo appears on the nomination form all the way through to the end of the nomination phase. So it's a great little sponsorship. And here's the nomination form. This is exactly what it looks like on the website. So first we ask for people to tell us about themselves. So we want to know who is making the nomination. And there's a good reason for that. I'll talk about that when we get into the process, but we need the name, the title, the company, and how to get a hold of them. Then we ask them to select a category or suggest a category for the person or company that they are making a nomination for. We say suggest a category because sometimes we do end up recategorizing the person based on what we have seen over the past years. I know that Kristen has shared with me, there have been a few nominations that came in that have had to be recategorized. And I'll get a little bit more into that when we talk about the different categories in just a minute. But again, suggest the category that you think the person is best suited for, and then that will be reviewed by the team back at WorkCom Central, and then further reviewed by a committee or two down the road. Then step 3 is tell us about the person or company you want to nominate. So this is where you put in, even if you're nominating a company, we still need the name of the person to get in touch with at that company so that we can confirm information, go over details, and make sure that we've got accurate info for the nomination. And then step 4, tell us why. And what we're looking for here is just a short paragraph or 2 that explains why you think the person is deserving of a Comp Laude award. What I typically tell people is, you don't have to write a lot of information here. We just want to know substantive information that you feel makes this person worthy of a nomination. So for example, some of the nominations that I've seen come in the past that would not make it to the next phase are things like, I nominate this person because they're a great nurse. I nominate this person because they show up to work every day and they do their job. That is not what we're looking for in the nomination of a Comp Laude award. We're looking for people who stand out amongst their peers and can be distinguished by their years of service, their desire and efforts to make a positive impact in the industry with their colleagues, with their injured workers that they're working with, and so forth. So we just need something that's substantive, and that's in that first phase. And then once all that information is submitted, you should get a confirmation that you have submitted the award, and then it goes into the queue. And I believe, Kristen, you can jump on and correct me if I'm wrong, once the nomination has been made, you have access to modify that nomination up until the date that the nominations close. Is that correct?
That is correct. So you have until 5 p.m. April 17th to edit or delete a nomination.
So again, make your nomination. It's important to get them in, but the great thing is if you make a nomination and you decide or remember, oh, I should have said this or that about that person or that company, you have the capability to go in and modify your nomination right up until the deadline. So that's a great little feature. Okay, next slide. This year, we have added some questions and answers, and I'm not going to go through the entire Q&A document. Here on this screen, you can see the questions that are on the document that we've answered, and they're available for everybody to review, download, pass, share, whatever you feel is necessary. But we decided to do this because of some of the questions that we get, year in and year out. So we hope that this is helpful. Okay, next. The other new thing this year is we have this handy little infographic. And give me 1 second. I am going to go through this in detail. Now, as Kristen mentioned, this is in the area where you can download it yourself. We will also email it to everybody after the webinar today. But here is where we kind of go into the process of what happens after nominations end. So step 1, after nominations end, and let me just back up and say we have several committees that are working on the nominations after the nominations close, And this is really where the interesting work begins, because the various committees start to look at the nominations that have been submitted. They make assessments on the information received, and then they input they basically decide if the nomination passes on. In some cases, they're voting on whether or not the person or company is a good comp laude nomination, and so on and so forth. So step one,
before we jump into that I wanted to share with many people don't know is it's not the Work Comp Central team that are made up of the committee. So they are all of industry peers from across the spectrum. So Work Comp Central has very limited interaction with the process. The only thing we really do is from one stage to another verify the data to make sure that the name's spelled correctly and that we have the latest contact information. But otherwise, it's made up of industry professionals and peers across the different segments.
Right. And so to further Kristen's comment, so at this stage, Work Comp Central is here to answer questions, provide guidance, and things of that nature to assist the various committees in doing their task, their process. So first, step one, when the nominations close, there is a committee that reviews all the nominations received, and they determine which ones should pass to the next round. It's simply a pass-fail. So the nominations committee goes through, reviews all the information, and they indicate whether it's a pass for them or a fail. And then the system aggregates the majority vote, and the majority, if that nomination receives a majority vote to pass, then that nomination makes it to the next round. And I wanted to also say, I meant to say this earlier on committees. Committees are always made up of a minimum of 5 people. It's always an odd number, just so that we don't have a tie. So pass fail on the first phase, majority vote, and that's what determines how they move on to the second phase. After that, we have step 2, the verification. It's a 3-step process. The same committee that did the pass fail, once we've decided who has passed, and once we have the information of all the nominations that have passed on, we look at the categorizations one more time and make sure that they're categorized the appropriate way. Typically, it's very easy to get everybody in the right category. There's been a couple years in the past where I can remember that there's been, some questions or whatnot, but typically we're able to fit them in a category where we feel that they belong. So that's the first thing that happens. The information's verified, and we make sure that everybody is in the right category. Next, hold on one second. Next, we have outreach to all the nominators who submitted the nominations to collect required data. So any person that made a nomination, so if you entered a nomination, somebody's going to call you to verify who you are and that you actually did make that nomination and that you intended to nominate that person in the category that you nominated them. Committee members work with the nominators to ensure all the information is received by deadline. So what happens is information that we require after the submission is that we ask for a current photo, a bio, a detailed narrative, and references. We ask for a minimum of 2 references. So all of that information is required. If we do not receive that information by the deadline, and there's a deadline usually about 3 weeks to a month that's given once we push it out, if we do not receive that information back by the deadline, then that nomination fails. It does not move on through the process. So the nominations committee is working with all those people to give it the best opportunity to get that information received timely and to make sure that we get everybody's information in so they can move on through the process. Step 3, vetting starts. So once the nomination committee finishes their task, which is, as I said, collecting all the information, reaching out to everybody to make sure they understand that that information is required, the next goal is to make contact with each nominee by phone and or email to verify that the information that we have received is correct. A lot of times people move from one company to another, And so this is our opportunity to capture that kind of information and make sure that we've got that entered appropriately. And we also like to make sure that the nominees are aware of their nomination. A lot of times in the past, we've found that a nominee didn't have any idea that they were nominated. And when we get around to inviting them to the awards gala and the event, they have no idea what we're talking about. So this is meant to a couple of things: make sure that they know that they've been nominated, and also provide awareness of their nomination so that they can plan to come to the event and be part of the event and the awards. And generally, we just want to make sure that the nomination is valid. These, again, there's a committee for vetting. These nominations are divided. We try to divide them into equal chunks. That's not always possible, but we try to keep it fair across the board. And then each member on the vetting committee team gets their assigned group of nominations, and it's their responsibility to reach out and to vet those individual nominations. And I didn't mention before.
Go ahead. Sorry, Yvonne. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I didn't mention before, but there are dates on this infographic. These are general dates, and of course this year we've already seen some dates move past where they normally are. So these are just general guidelines, and every year, based on what's happening, whether it's a situation like this, which hopefully we won't go through again, or for whatever reason, if we have to move the dates around, we'll move them around. But generally speaking, these are the dates that we'll try to stick to. Go ahead, Kristen.
And just on that vetting process, it's a very rewarding experience that we talk to the vetting committee, because they do talk to these individuals that maybe aren't showcased because they don't go to conferences, or they especially with the injured workers. So they actually have to speak to the nominators or the nominees, excuse me, and talk to them and interview them and find out if they're really deserving of this award, which most of them, I think all of them are. But it's really a rewarding experience, and gets that we do have a lot of good going on. So it is, if they don't get a chance to talk to them, then they are eliminated from this process, or their process ends there. So it is important that if you do put a nomination in, that you let you're kind of aware, or that the information's good, and kind of give them a heads up that they may have been nominated, because if we don't hear from them, then they do essentially get disqualified.
Thank you. So let me see where it was. So vetting assignments are made. Committee members are tasked with reaching out and having a conversation with nominees by phone. Vetting committee members, they have a dashboard. So all the people that are in the nominations committee, or the vetting committee, or the judges, they have a dashboard that they use to collect all this information and to make their designations. And so they're asked to document their conversations, and we ask the vetting committee, since they're reaching out to the individual that was nominated, or the individual that is the representative of the company that was nominated, we ask them to document what they feel distinguishes that person as a nominee. In other words, why are they worthy of a Comp Laude award? And so, in addition to all the information we've collected, we're asking the vetting committee, and typically these are made up of, as Kristen said, various people in the industry. Most of them have pretty good experience and have been around for a few years, so they have a good ear, and they're given a set of guiding questions to ask. Of course, they can ask their own questions depending upon how the conversation goes. But the point is, we're trying to have a conversation with that nominee, and that vetting committee member is asked to look for and identify distinguishing components that make that person stand apart from their peers. And this phase usually ends around the end of June. And then the final stage is judging. So all this information is collected. We've reached out to the nominators, and then we reach out to the nominees. And the final stage is the judges committee reviews everything that has been received. And I forgot to say one thing. Sorry, let me back up. So, and Kristen, you're going to have to jump in, because I've been removed from this process a little bit. So if I've gotten a nuance wrong, just jump in and correct me. once all of the vetting information is collected, there's a period of time we go through, and as she said, if we don't receive confirmation or we can't make connection with that nominee, then that nomination essentially fails. Once we've gotten past that point in time where we've gotten all the information, we've decided who's not going to pass on, all the nominees that continue to remain alive or in the system are then considered finalists. This is where a lot of the questions come into play about how do we decide what a finalist is. So again, this infographic has been designed to help people understand how we go from one phase to the next. But again, after all the information is received, and again, the information is collected into a dashboard with Work Comp Central, all the judgments and assessments have been made up until this point, and then the system helps us identify who are the finalists. There's a score that's assessed, and then we look at what the rankings are and who is in that category, and then that decides who the finalists are. Did I get that right, Kristen?
Yes.
Okay. So again, if there's questions about that, submit them in the chat feature, and I'll try to clarify. So now, once we decided who the finalists are, this is when you see us. It's typically in the summertime before WCI, and then you'll see us publish a list of finalists, actually a list of the whole nominees, and then we identify the finalists with a star or some kind of little feature that identifies who the finalists are. And you'll see that getting passed around online, on social media, and there's usually a little bit of a buzz about that. And then we try to have a little pop-up in bigger format that is visible at any events that we're at. Of course, that is going to be a different issue this year since all of our events have been canceled, and we have no idea when those are going to be back online. So once we're past that stage, then judging begins. And this is from my experience in the industry and this process. This is the toughest of all because there's a handful of people that are tasked with looking at a bunch of information that has been collected about these individuals. A lot of people that are on the judging committee know most of the people, and then they are asked to make a vote on a 1 to 100 scale. They are asked to rate the nominee based on the information that they're presented with. We ask them to try very hard not to take into consideration their personal alliances or people that they know. We ask them to truly look at the information received and that's been vetted and make a decision based on what is presented to them in terms of a score that they are able to assess to that nominee. So that process takes a few weeks, and the judges are given time to go in, review the information. Just like we talked about with the nomination, the judges are allowed to go in and work at their pace. They can do an hour a day or however long they can do it all in one day if they want to, or they can. But they're given the opportunity to go in and review the information through a dashboard. They can leave off, come back, change their mind, whatever they do up until the deadline. And then they're requested to submit their scores. They must vote on every finalist. We've had judges in the past that try to vote for just a small portion or leave a few off, but in order for their scores to count, they must submit a score for each and every finalist. And once that is submitted, then we have our scores, and that's when the final tallying comes into play. So the system will aggregate the scores. I can tell you that in the past years, it's very rare, but there have been cases when there have been, very close to a tie where Kristen and I have to assemble a team to review it and try to figure out, who's the clear winner there. Is there a clear winner? We have had ties in the past, but I'm not sure, Kristen, if you want to comment on that, how we go about deciding if there's a virtual tie, how we deal with that.
It's put back before the judging committee, or like you said, the group that we put together to review it, and then we'll get a majority vote on that type of situation. But usually it's put back before the committees. That's why we rely heavily on these committees and have them have an understanding of what the Comp Laude mission and vision is, and that it's super hard to pick one that's better than the other. but we will review. So they'll be presented all of everything that's been turned in. And that's why when we're emphasizing, when you have that call that comes into you of, we really need whatever you can do to put together for this person's story to do it, because then again, if it does come to a situation like that, that's presented to the committee or team that's put together to make a decision on that tiebreaker.
Thank you. Okay. All right. And then, of course, once the judges make their votes, assess their scores, we identify who the winners are, and we try very hard to keep that under wraps. It's very difficult. It's an exciting time when we get to that stage of the process. And then, of course, awards are ordered with the names of the winners. And then we move on to focusing on the event. I think that's the end of the presentation. Is that right, Kristen? I think we're at the end. Yeah. So that is all I have about the process. Are there any questions that you all have? Any questions about categories? I did want to take some time to go over the categories. Apologies, I thought I had a slide in here for that, but I guess I forgot. So Kristen, could you go back to the nomination form so I can just see the categories, and we'll just go over that real quick. I think it was like the third. There we go. So categories that we have identified are injured worker, applicant/claimant attorney, depending on what state you're in, defense attorney, medical professional, doctor or physician, industry leader, employer, service provider/vendor, claims professionals, and then we have work comp philanthropy. And Kristen had asked me to sort of expand on the difference between, because there seems to be some confusion about this, between industry leader and the service provider vendor category. So in the industry leader category, we're looking here for a person who has worked to make a positive impact, for positive change, or to make sure that the industry works, that the workers' compensation industry works as it was intended to. But in other words, has made an impact in a positive manner for the entire industry. And a service provider is, it can be a lot of different things, but this is somebody who's a leader for their particular segment of the industry, whether it's the type of service or product that they offer, and they work to excel in the delivery of services, of whether it's a service or specific products that their company delivers. So if you have any questions along those lines, let me know, and I'll see if I can distinguish a little bit better. But industry leader, I think last year we had a record number of people that were nominated into that category, and that caused some, a lot of discussion about that. So we're really looking for people in that category, the industry leader category, to be someone that has made a positive impact for the entire industry. And service provider is somebody that's, doing a great job at their company, representing their company or their service, or that service that that company provides, more specific to the segment of the industry that they serve. I hope that clarifies it a little bit more. And then work comp philanthropy, I think everybody understands there is somebody that's done a great amount of work in the philanthropic area. So I know that recently the founder of Kids Chance, was that last year, Kristen, that he won?
Yes.
Years running together. And then we've had, I think the year before that, WCI was recognized for their efforts with the service day at their event in August for Give Kids the World. So those are the kinds of things we're looking for there. It can be an individual, it can be an organization. And that was the other thing I was going to say. In the nominations, really the only categories where a company can be recognized would be an employer, a service provider, or the philanthropy, because like I said, a couple years back, we had WCI as an organization was recognized for their efforts. Everything else is an individual. Those are the only 3 categories where we can take a company nomination. And so I'm hearing that we have questions, and I'm ready.
Cool, cool. All right. So one that we have is a TPA a service provider vendor category, or is that more for bill reviewers, pharmacy, nurse case management, etc.?
So I would say TPA is definitely in the service provider vendor category. Would you agree, Kristen?
Yes. If you're doing that organization as a whole, right? And then if not, if you're doing an actual one of the claims professionals, then they're going to go towards the claims professional category or be nominated in that category as an individual. Yes, I think. So,
yes, I think.
Okay. So another question that we have is, if a nomination is made in one category, but you think that it is different, will you move it? And I know we kind of covered that, but I just figured I'd answer it still.
So yes, so yes, we will. If it was put in as one category, but the advisory team feels it belongs in another category, we will move it.
So a suggestion that came in that is possibly, would we consider taking a moment during the award ceremony to call up on stage the all Work Comp Central healthcare partners? Do you ever take suggestions for things during the actual award ceremony, like partners or different things that Work Comp Central partners with?
Do you want to answer that one?
We're always open to suggestions. I think, we do get many different things. We try and limit it. The feedback that we've gotten on the award ceremony, I don't know how many everybody has been to, but sometimes we get it's either too short, too long. We try to cut it down to an hour. Somebody said it needs to be a half an hour, but we're still trying to keep that it is awarding people for doing great things, and that is a process. So we're always open to suggestions, and we can always take this to the different committees. We do have an award ceremony committee and talk to them about it. So another question that came in is, would you consider, and maybe this is for the other category, but for a COVID-19 industry leader for this year?
Ooh. That's a good suggestion, Kristen.
Yeah, it's a great suggestion. So, we will, possibly be looking at that.
Yeah, and I think that if you have people in mind, because I've certainly seen a lot of information coming out, a lot of supportive stuff happening in that realm, make the nomination, and that's why that other category is there. Just clearly mark it, at the beginning that it's a suggested, COVID. I hate to call it a COVID award. That's awful. We're gonna have to come up with a term, but yeah, make sure it's related to responding to the COVID pandemic situation.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so another question that came in, what is the best way to retain formatting of the nomination narrative?
Formatting. So we might have to unmute that person and have them ask the question, but I think I understand what that means. So there's really not, in the very beginning, we did have a specific format in a form, and it caused a lot of angst. So we decided pretty early on to open that up and make it easier and more free flowing. I can tell you that typically, if a person is really serious about making a nomination and wanting that nomination to go anywhere, those nominations typically are a minimum of a typewritten page of information, a minimum. I can tell you, I saw a couple of nominations that came in already where the person that made the nomination has put in probably 2 or 3 typewritten pages worth of information when all we ask for is really a paragraph or 2. So as far as a format, it's I don't know that we have a specific link that we want to say or what we need, because again, we're trying to make it easy for people that are making the nominations so that we get plenty of nominations, and we just are looking for substance. So I talked about things that could be that we require to be submitted. What I failed to mention is we also accept other documentation. So while all we really require are the bio, the photo, references, I think that's everything that we need. We can also receive any kind of a document. We can receive a PDF, we can receive a JPEG, we can receive a video file, we can receive Excel spreadsheets. We've had people in the past that submitted professional commercial video that was from a newscast that was submitted. So other supporting documentation can be submitted. So if I didn't answer that question, could that person resubmit or clarify what more I can provide?
Okay, we will check that out. So another one question that came in: if the nominee is out of state and they are selected, do we pay for their travel to the event?
I missed the first part of that. If it's an injured worker, is that?
The nominee, if they're a finalist.
So the only category that we do that for is the injured worker category. So we have an entire sponsorship built around the injured worker category. So there are people or companies that sponsor, and that's what that sponsorship is for. It pays for the travel of the injured worker and a family member, as well as accommodations and the event and all those things. So we don't generally pay for the travel of a nominee unless it's an injured worker.
Okay. So one comment was that they think that 45 minutes to 60 minutes was great for the last award ceremony, the one that we did. It's nice that people have that opportunity after the fact to sit and network, and as well as congratulate the winners. And so the hour range is good and appropriate so that we can celebrate. So that was one comment that came in. As well as hopefully we'll get to publish the nominees and finalists by summertime so that we can have it ready during this time to kind of put some positivity out there. So those are the comments that we have. If you have any other questions, I feel like we have got through them.
So last chance, any other questions, comments, or suggestions?
Well, before all people are doing that, I'll take a second to talk about. So the biggest thing through the awards ceremony that we're trying to do, and we think that we've done, is push the mission that David started this all with. I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to meet David, but he was with being the media, especially right now with what's going on, there is that negativity or just consistent pounding of information, and it's not always positive. Or how do we handle claims? It's very that where David wanted to bring positivity. And as we can see over the years how this event has grown, because our industry is pretty great at what we do in delivering benefits and taking care of people. So it's that opportunity to really recognize individuals that maybe also aren't able to be recognized because they are in a position that it's not always flattering or what they want to do. So I just wanted to talk about what Comp Laude really is and why we do pay for the injured workers to come out, and we push the injured worker scholarship sponsorship, because that does help us get them there. I did actually have an injured worker this past year that tried, he was introducing companies to the Comp Laude event and actually set up a call with his transportation company that helped him during his injury, and set up a call to introduce us and just have me talk to them about the Comp Laude event. So it is really making an impact to the industry at large, and why we have the process that we do for our awards. It takes a lot of work. Our committees dedicate their time and their energy to really help us vet out these different individuals and companies that are doing great things. But with that, Chase, do we have any other questions?
No, it looks like that might be it.
All right. Well, you can still always shoot me and Yvonne an email. We're always here to answer questions, or give us a call. We're always around and happy to ask. That's how we continue to build this event that we do. And I appreciate you all taking the time today and joining us. Yvonne, any final words?
I can't think of anything except for, again, we appreciate everybody's attendance today, and please go out and encourage folks to nominate. And just wanted to end on the reminder that we're needing specifically doctor, physician nominations, as well as service provider, vendor category nominations. So thank you all. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. Be well.